Evan Williams said to the woman standing in his office doorway. "I'm going to throw up." She stepped backward, pulling the door closed, a metal clicking sound reverberating through the room as he grabbed the black wastebasket in the corner of his office, his hands now shaking and clammy. This was it. His last act as the CEO of Twitter would be throwing up into a garbage can. He knelt there for a moment, his dark jeans resting on the rough, carpeted floor, then leaned back against the wall. Outside, the cold October air rustled the trees that lined Folsom Street below. Violin-like noises of traffic mingled with a muffled din of conversation near his office doorway. Moments later, someone informed his wife, Sarah, who also worked at Twitter. "Something is wrong with Ev." She rushed up to his corner office, her rich, black, curly hair wobbling slightly as she walked. Sarah checked her watch, realizing that Ev had only 45 minutes before he would have to address the 300 Twitter employees and break the news. She opened the door and went inside. Down the hall, the Twitter public relations team reviewed the blog post that would go up on the website at 11:40 a.m., the moment Ev would finish addressing the company and hand the microphone to the new CEO, passing power in a gesture as simple as handing off the baton in a relay race. The blog post, which would be picked up by thousands of press outlets and blogs from around the world, gleefully announced that Twitter, the 4-year-old social network, now had 165 million registered people on the service who sent an astounding 90 million tweets each day. 5 paragraphs down, it noted that Evan Williams, the current CEO, was stepping down of his own volition. "I have decided to ask our COO, Dick Costello, to become Twitter's CEO," said the post, allegedly written by Ev. Of course, that wasn't true. Ev, seated on the floor of his office with his hands wrapped around a garbage can, had absolutely no desire to say that. A farmer's son from Nebraska who had arrived in San Francisco a decade earlier with nothing more than a couple of bags of cheap, raggedy, oversized clothes and tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt, Ev wanted to remain chief of the company he had co-founded. But that wasn't going to happen. It didn't matter that he was now worth more than $1 billion or that he had poured his life into Twitter. He didn't have a choice. He had been forced out of the company in a malicious, bloody boardroom coup carried out by the people he had hired, some of whom had once been his closest friends, and by some of the investors who had financed the company. Ev looked up as he heard Sarah come in. He wiped the sleeve of his sweater across the dark stubble on his chin. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked. "Fuck," he said, unsure if it was his nerves or if he was coming down with something. Or both. Down the hall, through the doors that led to the Twitter office's main foyer, copies of The New Yorker, The Economist, and The New York Times were fanned out on the white square coffee table in the waiting area. Each publication contained articles about Twitter's role in the revolutions now taking place in the Middle East, rebellions that, through Twitter and other social networks, would eventually see the fall of dictators in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen, and spark massive protests in Bahrain, Syria, and Iran. Around the corner, Biz Stone, another of Twitter's 4 co-founders, finalized an email telling the employees that there would be an all-hands meeting in the cafeteria at 11:30 a.m. Attendance was mandatory. No guests were allowed. There would be no hummus, just important news. He hit send and stood up from his desk, heading for Ev's office to try to cheer up his friend and boss of nearly a decade. Jason Goldman, who oversaw Twitter's product development and was one of Ev's few allies on the company's 7-person board, was already sitting on the couch when Biz arrived and dropped down next to him. Ev was now quietly sipping from a bottle of water, despondently staring off into the distance, the turmoil and madness of the past week playing over in his mind. "Remember when," Goldman and Biz chorused, trying to cheer Ev up with humorous memories of the last several years at Twitter. There were lots of stories to tell, like the time Ev had nervously been a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show, fumbling in front of